Ready? To our viewing audience, both present and hybrid, our invited guests, potential visitors, colleagues of the Nevis Investment Promotion Agency, the Nevis Financial Services Department, and the Ministry of Finance, a pleasant good morning. To those of you at the Abu Dhabi Hall in Dubai, a heartfelt good afternoon is wished to you. Welcome to Expo 2020 Dubai, the Nevis Financial Services Conference. My name is Colin Dorr, and I'm the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Nevis. We are very delighted today to be able to present to you our potential investors, invited guests, and hybrid audience, the importance to be derived from expanding opportunities for financial and estate planning. Allow me first to establish our protocol and to acknowledge our hybrid speakers present here on island. The Honorable Mark Brantley, Premier and Minister of Finance, Nevis, and also Minister of Foreign Affairs in the government of St. Christopher and Nevis. Ms. Heidelin Sutton, Regulator at the Nevis Financial Services Regulatory Commission. Mr. Jonathan Goppman, Partner at Nelson Mullins. Also, a hearty good afternoon to our presenter who is currently at the Abu Dhabi Hall in Dubai, Mr. Ada Shivastava, CEO of International Merchant Bank, Nevis. Welcome to all. As the COVID-19 pandemic continues to affect the world, we have created ways for you, our potential investors and businesses, to stay buoyant during this difficult time. Today, we afford you the opportunity to gain key first-hand information about our products and services that would enable you to effectively make the best financial decision for you, your business, and your family. With over 35 years of experience in the financial services sector, the Nevis Financial Services sector offers an array of services to investors with relative ease of access. It has become the primary driver of the Nevisian economy. Accountability, efficiency, integrity, and vigilance are the 4 pillars of our Financial Services Regulatory Commission. And we trust that the information and the dialogue here today will properly prepare you to invest with us in the many products that we have readily available. I trust that you would be an attentive audience as we first present to you and later engage you in discussions. It is our hope that this session would be very interactive as we endeavor to provide answers to your numerous questions or clarify any area of concern that you may have. Thank you. At this point, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, our Premier, the Honorable Mark A.G. Brantley, who will present to you on the tranquil, skilled, and political stability of Nevis, and to welcome all to this conference. Honorable Premier.
Good afternoon to my distinguished audience present at the Abu Dhabi Hall, and an equally pleasant morning to you who are joining us virtually. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to speak to you today and to join Permanent Secretary Colin Dorr in welcoming you to this, our conference on the operations of the international financial services sector in our beloved island of Nevis. I am truly delighted that you have taken the time to be with us, and I'm hopeful that your time with us today will be well spent. I wish, firstly, to congratulate the United Arab Emirates government for hosting this prestigious Dubai Expo. It is indeed a welcoming event where participants can showcase the best in business, arts, and culture. I only wish I was there in person to experience and enjoy the exciting display of creativity and innovation. The global community over the past 2 years has been devastated by the COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic has had a cataclysmic effect on the health and economic systems of many countries and has created a global malaise that is only now beginning to retrench. As we emerge from its grip, it is important that each country collaborates to ensure that the economic recovery is steady and sustainable. We must concentrate on the individuals that are most affected by the pandemic. We must build back better for both people and our planet. I see this expo as a golden opportunity to celebrate the human spirit, a spirit that is defiant in the face of adversities, with an unwavering quest to overcome challenges and conquer new frontiers. I wish only the very best of success for this Dubai Expo 2021. This conference today is devoted to delivering as much information as possible on the products and services offered by the Nevis International Financial Service Professionals, including corporate registry service and international banking, and the regulatory environment that supports the delivery of such services. However, I must first introduce you to this gem that is the island of Nevis. Nevis forms part of the Twin Island Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, located in the Eastern Caribbean. It is an English-speaking island, having been colonized by Great Britain in 1623. Thus, constitutionally, it is based on the British parliamentary system, utilizing the English common law. In 1983, the Federation gained its political independence from Great Britain, and it has been able to chart its own political and economic future ever since that time. As Minister of Foreign Affairs in the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, I have had the opportunity to travel to a number of countries, and I can unequivocally state the common mantra that Nevis is nice. The island is small in size with a land area of 36 square miles, or 93 square kilometers. However, it is big in serenity and tranquility. The unspoiled natural beauty of the island is discerning for the recreational traveler. The island offers a unique experience of quaint boutique hotels, charming beaches, adventure hikes, and incredible local cuisine. It is absolutely perfect for a destination wedding, and I invite everyone who is thinking of having such a wedding to consider Nevis. Nevis is also a magnificent island for new business ventures. The island offers close proximity to the North American continent, a highly literate population, and lucrative investment incentives with no restrictions on foreign ownership of business corporations. The Nevis Investment Promotion Agency is willing and able to provide any guidance necessary to commence business operations on our island. An investment in tourism is a lucrative prospect, and there's almost a natural affinity for investments in villa and property development. Moreover, we are keen to advance ecotourism, horticulture, information technology, and of course, green energy. However, ladies and gentlemen, this conference is about our international financial services sector. And while our most distinguished presenters will divulge pertinent information on the attractiveness and safety of investing in the international financial services and corporate services provided in Nevis, I must also persuade you of the merits of such a decision. International financial services will play a critical role in supporting the economic recovery and resilience necessary in the post-COVID-19 era. International banks, which provide important trade financing solutions to businesses in developing and emerging markets, will help to unlock the potential for a more robust and synchronized economic turnaround in these markets. The Abu Dhabi International Financial Center is a visionary financial center that has significantly benefited the United Arab Emirates. Its goals are entirely aligned with that of the Nevis International Financial Services Center, one of which is to foster international and financial services development in a strong regulatory environment. International financial services started in Nevis in 1984, on the heels of the Federation's independence from Great Britain. This sector was conceived and envisaged as a niche market for the island. Our attempt to strengthen the economic landscape meant a strategic external focus to generate meaningful foreign investment for sustainable development. The tourism sector, augmented by the international financial services sector, provides professional services concentrating on the formation, registration, and management of international companies, corporations, trusts, foundations, insurance, and banks. Our center hosts competent registered agents capable of providing these services to our international clientele. The Financial Services Regulatory Commission has developed a regulatory environment that is committed to the adherence to international standards and has implemented a rigorous risk-based supervisory framework to monitor the compliance of regulated entities with anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing, and prudential legislation. My government, the Nevis Island Administration, has an unwavering commitment to strengthen the international financial services infrastructure and has invested in improving the quality of the product legislation to ensure that they serve the needs of our international clients. My government has also invested in the implementation of a state-of-the-art online registration system that allows service providers to register new entities on Nevis. The new portal is designed to ensure high-level data security protection and controls. This, along with our investment in the human capacity of the relevant stakeholders, for international clients desirous of utilizing the services that we have to offer, I assure you that Nevis is an ideal jurisdiction for your business. We seek to enhance our global visibility as an attractive jurisdiction through the development of strategic partnerships with other reputable financial services jurisdictions, and this conference today is intended to help us to achieve that objective. With those few words, I want once again to welcome you to this, our International Financial Services Conference, and to wish you continued good health and success. As we look, ladies and gentlemen, to expand our business globally and to better preserve and protect personal and family wealth, I urge you to look at Nevis and the world-class legal, regulatory, and business framework that Nevis provides. We are a stable democracy with an independent court system based on the English common law, and we have in this country an abiding respect for the rules of law. Nevis invites you to come and do business with us. We assure you that you will not be disappointed. Thank you for your attention, and I wish this conference every success. It now gives me great pleasure to invite to address us Mr. Andrew Yang, a distinguished graduate of Tam Kang and National Chen Chi and Oxford Universities and Harvard JFK School of Business. He is currently the Director General of the Commercial Office of Taipei in Dubai. I now hand things over, therefore, to my dear friend, Mr. Andrew Yang. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, for the kind introduction. St. Kitts and Nevis has been a great partner of Taiwan since 1983. So I deeply appreciate this opportunity to make a brief presentation on how Taiwan helped its companies find their global partners during the pandemic. I'm the Director General of Commercial Office of Taipei. I represent Taiwan's interest in the UAE. In this room, we also have our friends, colleagues from Taiwan Trade Center. In Taiwan, most companies are small and medium enterprise. So in 1970s, we founded an organization called TAITRA. It stands for Taiwan External Trade Development Council. It is a nonprofit promoting trade organizations created through collaboration of private and public sectors. Today, my presentation, Taiwan Trade Mega Expo, is a masterpiece of TAITRA. Actually, I prepare a PowerPoint, but since the technical problem, so invite all of you to use your imagination. So this TAITRA Mega Expo showcase products from Taiwan's marketable industries, include ICT, food, machinery, medical equipment, plastic, and auto parts. So international buyers can find out product details through a 3-dimension models and Skype providers in real time with just one click. Actually, it's a very, very efficient one. So once inside the expo, there's a Taiwan Trade Hub in the center of the expo. This is a one-stop traffic division service. And through this hub can lead the buyers to different industrial pavilions or video conferencing or forums. Its website features RWD, which means responsive web design. It is compatible with all devices. Remove barriers to make it closer to your online sourcing experience. Among the 10 pavilions, there are 5 core industries pavilions, which is auto parts, medical, disaster prevention, circular economy, and IT and telecommunication. In addition to the expo, I'm delighted to bring your attention to our latest service, just launched in September of this year. That is Taiwan Virtual Pavilion. Unlike the Mega Expo, Taiwan Virtual Pavilion is designed particularly for Middle East, Africa, and Latin America. So I think it's very suitable for today's presentation. Actually, I prepare a video, but just user imagination. I will try to make it so that you can realize what it really look like. In the TAITRA, the members in Taiwan, so the Taiwanese company, when they join the TAITRA as a member, then they can register to the website. And the company, they can update their flagship products or their booths on event web page at any time with efficient and flexibility. And when the buyer wants to buy or want to check with a seller, we provide an online meeting module that supports translation between over 100 languages. And so that we can facilitate the buyers and sellers interaction. And of course, we collect data, but we collect for good, not for bad. We will use the data as a reference for designing future marketing strategies. The data collected in the expo roughly include number of products, hits, and views of the VR booths. We also collect visiting behavioral data, countries visit, length of stay, and so on. Now there are around 150 Taiwanese companies displaying 750 products in the pavilion, include food, plastic, information and communication equipment, mechanical hardware, auto parts, and medical equipment. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude my presentation here. I hope this information you can find helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Yang, for that presentation, outlining the different products that are available at the pavilion there in Dubai. I also wish to thank the Premier for his inspiring words, outlining the various financial services products which are available for your investment opportunities here on Nevis. Our next speaker is Mr. Adha Srivastava, CEO of International Merchant Bank. He has a decade of experience in global trade financing and banking. The International Merchant Bank is licensed and operating here in Nevis, providing services to individuals, corporations, and institutional clients. Mr. Srivastava will address you on the topic, supporting the global agenda of sustainable finance post-COVID-19 recovery. Mr. Srivastava.
Good morning. Thank you. To begin, I would just like to thank Mr. Yang from Taiwan. In fact, these great St. Kitts and Nevis masks are made in Taiwan. So thank you. We appreciate that. To the rest, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Adhar Srivastava, and I am the CEO of International Merchant Bank Limited. I welcome those that have made the journey to attend in person today, and those that have tuned in to the thanks of video conferencing. I hope that my presentation to you today provides further insight into Nevis, banking in Nevis, our efforts for supporting the global agenda of sustainable financing, and complements the wonderful things that you will hear from the other speakers. Before I go into my presentation, I would like to give a note of thanks to the other speakers, the Honorable Mark Brantley, Mr. Yang, Ms. Sutton, Mr. Dorr, and Mr. Goppman. I would also like to highlight the Nevis Investment Promotion Agency, which in fact helped me realize the potential for sustainable investment climate in Nevis itself. International Merchant Bank is the newest of the 3 international merchant banks that is chartered and regulated on the island of Nevis. Outside of providing the typical services associated with an international bank, such as private and corporate accounts, International Merchant Bank has a focus in trade finance. As a bank, we of course concern ourselves with the balance sheet, credit risk, assessment, compliance, and profit and loss. However, and overarching to those matters, we are charged with the task and responsibility of chartering a sustainable future, not only for ourselves, internal stakeholders, but also our clients, service providers, regulators, the local community, and as a result of our actions, the global community as a whole. I had the unique opportunity to go through the entire process of establishing a bank from scratch to finish, from business plan to approval, from an idea to operating on the island of Nevis. During that time, I had the privilege to interact with various members of the Nevis financial services community, be it service providers, potential and current employees, lawyers, accountants, auditors, and regulators, and I found one thing in common throughout. I found that all were interested in building a sustainable future for Nevis. This want for a sustainable future I felt was further pushed by the impact of COVID. No country or economy has been immune to the effects of COVID. Even this grand Expo 2020 is being held in 2021. But that for care for country and focus on a positive goal carried by the members of the Nevis community that I saw during the approval process and has remained even now as International Merchant Bank is operational is phenomenal. I think in order for us to talk about supporting the global agenda of sustainable financing, that I highlight that at the very core of my interactions with people on island, I have found their desire to pursue sustainability in all forms as paramount. This gives me comfort in knowing that all policies, incentives, initiatives, and steps taken towards sustainable financing will have the support and best wishes of all persons involved. At International Merchant Bank, we recognize that the topic of sustainable financing can be viewed from several different lenses, and it does not mean the same thing on one's worldview or situation in business. First, and probably the most equated to sustainable financing, is the topic of ESG. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. In short, it's to view risk in investments beyond the typical credit assessment and to apply these non-financial factors, again, environment, social, and governance, to determine any material risks or potential benefits. The current typical ESG lending is done in one of two ways. Either a particular project is supported, for example, a solar power plant. These environment or socially good projects can be backed by loans or bonds, which have become known as green bonds, social bonds, blue bonds, and general sustainable bonds, which all support some ESG underrelated project. Or the second is by providing companies that have a positive ESG score discounted borrowing rates to further incentivize those companies. In terms of green bonds and the likes, the benefits are clear. ESG financing gives the possibility to finance projects that may have not attracted capital in the past. For mature and sophisticated companies, having a strong ESG record could result in a lower cost of capital and therefore increase their overall profitability. So you get paid to do good. There are large global banks that are helping to tackle financing the ESG issue. Current ESG financing, though, remains fragmented, as it is still properly being defined and requirements for ESG can vary. In that sense, we must recognize that just how in financial services, there is a not one-size-fits-all solution, it's the same for investing in ESG. International Merchant Bank and other banks focused in trade finance in particular are in a unique position to help and support sustainable financing by being able to examine each transaction for its ESG benefits. Every import-export transaction, every trade, every movement of goods that the bank underwrites or finances is an opportunity for us to review the transaction from a lens of ESG. Every time that International Merchant Bank will write a letter of credit, a standby letter of credit, or a bank guarantee, it will have the implication not only on us, our clients, the end buyer and seller, but depending on the product, it might have an impact on the environment or society. Unlike traditional banks, where their role is mostly in settlements for payments or an account for protecting profits or paying bills, we come into the picture at the very start of the transaction and stay for the whole cycle. ESG accountability is at the beginning as it comes to trade finance. Currently, the IFC, as part of the World Bank Group, has partnered with the Banking Environment Initiative and have introduced as a first step in their efforts the Sustainable Shipment Letter of Credit, which was launched actually at the World Economic Forum. Simply, if a letter of credit carries the Sustainable Shipment of Letter of Credit stamp, it allows for preferential treatment of the underlying credit as it implies that the transaction meets internationally recognized sustainability standards. Now, this is not just a feel-good movement or moment for having done the letter of credit, but in the case that it does meet the criteria, the cost of financing is less, and banks like us can further share these discounts and incentives with our clients. Currently, the sustainable shipment of letter of credit is limited to palm oil, and more commodities are being added. The process of adding a commodity is rigorous, as it involves verifying and authenticating every level of the value chain of the underlying product as it moves from creation to final shipment. This was seen as an underwriting challenge before, but as improvements have been made in data sharing between countries, the potential for smart contracts using blockchain technology, it has become more and more plausible. International Merchant Bank, for example, looks forward to offering sustainable shipment of letter of credit to its clients as they become more widely available and feasible, and of course, passing on the financial savings. Our view of sustainable financing is not only from an ESG lens, it is also important to provide sustainable financing solution from the view of our clients and counterparties. To be a company competitive in the global economy today, either the company needs to have a highly specialized protected product or needs to be nimble and agile, and sometimes both. Entrepreneurs need to be quick thinking and ready to move. I learned from my father that entrepreneurs and companies, especially those that are starting to blossom or wishing to compete on a global stage, face a lot of challenges that are informal barriers to growth. So what do I mean by this? For example, a business person from a country that has poor visa relations with other countries will never be able to make it to that last second meeting that could help them win the deal. Or the bank that a person wishes to open an account says that unless they come in person, they won't be able to have an account. Or even worse, won't open an account for them due to a generic policy of de-risking from a particular country, nationality, or sector. Or a business person trying to convince a supplier to supply them, even though the country of import has a bad stigma for non-payment. Perhaps their own country does not offer the sophisticated financing solutions that are available to less mature companies in more mature markets. The list of barriers can seem endless, and I'm sure all of you can think of something in your past or even currently that has been an informal barrier to your growth. We at International Merchant Bank believe that providing solutions to remove the informal barriers as described is critical to provide sustainable global financing. Logically, a company or an entrepreneur that is busy dealing with all those issues will not be able to make the time or have the peace of mind to focus on ESG goals. They're too busy starting and growing the business than doing good for the world. For the examples above, with International Merchant Bank, a prospective investor can put their funds with us for asset protection or investment. A client can open an account remotely and have everything e-verified without needing to make a trip. Though I highly recommend taking a trip to beautiful Nevis, and our compliance officer jokes that we should mandate it for every client so that they can get a vacation. Our clients can issue a letter of credit from our bank and have it relayed or confirmed by a major rated bank, thus showing strength to supplier and getting better business banking terms. And finally come to us when their local bank is not sophisticated enough or efficient enough to provide them a back-to-back letter of credit, pre or post-shipment financing, or discounting of a banker's acceptance, or many of the other trade finance products that we have. Even for counterparties, such as multilateral banks or international banks with mandates to make ESG-focused investments, International Merchant Bank and other banks in Nevis as well can be partners for deployment of that capital. In short, all those examples mean is that sustainable financing is not going to be sustainable unless solutions are being built for all members of our global community. The third leg of sustainable financing stool from our point of view is that the banking climate funding the transaction is long-term and not short-sighted. In trade finance, typical exposure to obligors ranges from 90 to 180 days. Even though these exposures are self-liquidating in a short span of time, it is still important to have a strong credit and compliance regime. To ensure that trade cycles and flows remain in a steady state, it is imperative that the tools banks are using are equipped to handle the business undertaking. At International Merchant Bank, for example, we employed the use of top-notch compliance and risk software using a program known as Overnight Watchman that checks on each evening sanctions-related screening of each client from lists provided by the Dow Jones. Our senior management team and soon all frontline employees would have taken courses offered by ACAMS to train us better to recognize the frontline risks in trade-based money laundering. I myself am ACAMS certified, as well as many of the persons who I have met on island that are involved in the Nevis financial sector. This all goes to say that this commitment to continued education is vital to ensure to our clients and the business sector as a whole that transactions carried out by banks in Nevis ensure a sustainable financial future for all and not just the banks. The topic of supporting the global agenda of sustainable financing, therefore, in our view, is multi-layered. We are preparing ourselves as a bank to be mindful of ESG concerns and to utilize financial tools that are available and to be ready for those on the horizon. We also remain cognizant that a vital part of ensuring sustainable financing is to address the pain points and needs of those that are unable to focus on ESG concerns due to the informal barriers that exist in business. And lastly, we recognize that a strong commitment to compliance and learning is the key to ensuring a sustainable financing future. I hope that my presentation to you today, there is something of value that you have derived. I look forward to listening to you, be it your experience with ESG and how we can improve our own ESG efforts, informal barriers that you have encountered or continue to encounter, and how banks can help you navigate those barriers and improve the situation for all. And finally, learning us how we can together ensure a sustainable financing future for everyone. I thank you for your time. I wish you a good day and a prosperous Expo 2020. Thank you.
ESGs as we seek to restore sustainability in our financing post-COVID-19 recovery. Our next speaker is Mr. Jonathan Goppman. Mr. Goppman is a partner at Nelson Mullins and has a wealth of experience in assisting high net worth families and individuals on estate planning matters. Mr. Goppman will share with you the benefits of the Nevis International Business Corporation, Limited Liability Company, and the International Trust, which are the products readily available for investment here on Nevis. Mr. Goppman.
Can everyone see me, or? I know I'm unmuted now, but I don't. Let me see if I can get my camera working, so I do apologize. Oh, there we go. It looks like I'm gonna have to do this without a camera, so I do apologize, but I'm assuming everyone can hear me fine. So not sure what's going on with the camera here. So anyway, pleasure to be here. It was a good thing I'm not on camera because I'm getting ready to play golf this morning here in Atlanta. I recorded a session for this conference last Wednesday, and I was told we're actually going to do it live today. So last night. So interesting stuff. But the one thing I'd like you to take away from the Nevis, first I want to talk about the Nevis International Trust Ordinance, or NIETO. The one thing I'd like you to take away from that ordinance is it's progressive. It is, as it stands now with the amendments that we made in 2015, and hopefully with an amendment and restatement of the act that we're trying to pass within the next couple of years, within the next year or two, that's floating around the financial services industry in Nevis. It is progressive and ahead of the game, and tries to be attractive not only to the United States but to the world globally, for a host of reasons. So first, I'll focus on what we did to the act, why individuals in the United States love to use it, and what it helps you accomplish, and then globally what the act can do for your clients throughout the world by using it and settling a trust in Nevis. So first things first, Nevis allows for what we call self-settled trusts. Okay, and that's where you can transfer assets in as the settlor, sometimes referred to as the grantor, the trustor, the creator of the trust. That's the person who settles and funds the trust, and can define the terms of the trust for that matter, which is very flexible as well. And you can retain an interest in that trust, whether you're the sole current beneficiary of that trust or you're one of multiple beneficiaries, whether it be a spouse and descendants or children and charities or other designated relatives or individuals that you want to include as a beneficiary of that trust. And when you do that under Nevis law, all of the assets in that trust, provided you include certain language in that trust will be protected from the claims of creditors. It doesn't matter where those creditors are, where they have their judgment, but if they try to collect on the trust and they have to go to Nevis to do that, okay, then the assets are protected from the claims of those creditors. And I'll explain how we get there in a little bit as well. The way the act is set up, if a creditor from anywhere in the world wants to attack the trust, you have to obviously have an underlying judgment against a beneficiary. The only way to go after the beneficiary's interest in that trust is to prove that there was a fraudulent transfer of assets into those trusts, or the assets that are in their trust derived from criminal activity or a crime. Obviously, both very hard to do or very difficult to do. The fraudulent transfer statute provides for a 1-year statute of limitations, and if you don't get there within that 1-year period, you're time barred from attacking the trust. Additionally, if you're trying to prove a fraudulent transfer, that the burden is on the creditor to do that, and you have to prove it by a standard that's known as beyond a reasonable doubt, and that's the highest standard in the civil law. It's actually a criminal law standard imported into the civil law. So if your client, your settlor, creator, can come up with just one valid reason, a plausible reason why he or she created that trust and funded it under the circumstances, you're probably going to end up, or your creditors or creditors are probably going to end up losing, most certainly losing that that battle. Okay, now if you can prove it that the assets in the trust are the proceeds of a crime, that may be a different story. But that's the only way to attack a trust that's properly drafted, a wholly discretionary trust, and a trust that also includes a spendthrift provision. That's a statutory provision that tells you, that you include certain language in your trust, that if someone attacks the trust, they can't attach the beneficiary's interest in the trust, and they can't, and a beneficiary isn't permitted to assign his or her interest or its interest in the trust as well. Keeping up with the progressiveness of the act, you can do a trust in Nevis that literally lasts forever, a perpetual trust. There is no current rule against perpetuities, and that's very important. That puts you on par with many jurisdictions in the United States and a handful of jurisdictions in the offshore world as well that have had that rule eviscerated for a long time. And the modern rule against perpetuities, when you think about it, the rule came about for tax purposes, but it also came about because you didn't want to lock up assets in. There I am in a good suit and tie. As you can see, I'm a handsome individual. Anyway, the rule against perpetuities came about because of a concern for commerce. You didn't want to lock assets up in trust. Well, in today's world, a trust and a trustee has the ability to sell assets and buy new assets. So you're really not locking assets up in commerce. So the original policy reason for a rule against perpetuities in the common law world, have really long since become history. And there's nothing offensive about using a perpetual trust. The other thing that is important to focus on with the Nevis International Trust Ordinance is it permits for what we refer to as directed trusts. And what's a directed trust? Well, you have a trustee in the jurisdiction, a situs trustee, that enables you to claim Nevis and the benefits of Nevis law. Yet you can appoint a third party, whether in Nevis or outside of Nevis, anywhere in the world for that matter. And that third party can be vested with all sorts of powers, and it's not going to cause that trust to be invalid. So for instance, your third party protector can either have the authority to have to consent to distributions, or more flexibly, can direct the trustee on distributions. That way you don't have to worry about trustees taking on liability for a decision to make distributions. And under the Act, I'm going to admit that person is waiting. Under the Act, if a trustee if a trustee is directed to take an action and you have the proper language in the trust instrument, especially such as making a distribution, the trustee is exonerated from all liability, relieved of all liability in that situation. So that's one example of how a directed trust works. And you can vest that power and authority in a committee of individuals, and we basically call them trust protectors in one sense or another, or in one individual or two individuals. So you have a lot of flexibility there on how to structure that as well. A directed trust statute enables you to appoint an outside investment advisor or vest that same third party or different third party with the ability to direct the trust and the trustee on investments of the trust. And again, the trustee is exonerated. So this is legislation, and it's a part of the act that should be very attractive to individuals. When I think about taking a step back over this, directed trusts and some of the provisions that I've just talked about, self-settled trusts, permitting self-settled trusts, are very popular here in the United States in jurisdictions such as Alaska and Delaware and South Dakota, which I'm sure you've all heard about. And Nevis was actually well ahead of the game in that regard. They had their legislation well before Delaware or South Dakota or Alaska, for that matter, and have been so they have far more experience in that regard as well. But so getting back to the directed trust statute, so your protector can be protector or a group of protectors, individuals, committees can be vested with the power to direct the trustee on distributions, vested with the power to direct the trustee on investments, can have the power to remove and replace a trustee. You can give that individual or individuals a significant amount of authority over that trust. From a trustee's perspective, again, the trustee can be exonerated from liability, both by statute in the Act and also by the provisions of the trust instrument, the settlement of trust or the deed of trust. And that also changes the playing field from a cost perspective as well, because if you reduce or substantially release the trustee from liability, the cost of administering that trust and the risks that the trustee are taking can go way down. And so this should be a very attractive way of structuring trusts in Nevis and actually throughout the world for that matter. But Nevis is way ahead of the game right now. And then when you taking a step back, if you look at what people use and want and their desires for particularly clients of ours that are in the Middle East and in Central and South America, they often like control of the assets that are in trusts, and obviously trustees are hesitant in that situation because they need more control and more information on the assets in the trust. And this enables you to design a trust where you can leave that family or their close advisors with a great deal of control and authority over the trust assets, even though you've transferred title to the trust and custody of the assets over to the trustee. In Central and South America, it's been popular to use foundations or siftungs as the vehicle of choice because that enables the family to retain substantial control over assets. Well, the self-settled trust legislation really helps put trusts and the use of trusts on par as far as control goes, retain control with the foundation. By the way, Nevis also permits foundations. It has a statutory regime that allows you to form a foundation in Nevis the same way you can form a foundation in Liechtenstein or in Luxembourg or the Netherlands Antilles or Panama or places like that. So you do have that option as well. It's worth mentioning. We also have when we revised the Trust Act in 2015, we put in what I would refer to as special trusts. The United States, we're guilty of creating all sorts of interesting trusts that you don't have in other places in the world. What we call retained interest or mandatory retained interest, mandatory income trusts, trusts in which we in which we allow our beneficiaries to retain annuity interest and what we call unit trust interest, where you get a percentage of the assets each year, the right to live in a residence. We have all sorts of, in addition to that, we have charitable remainder trusts and split interest trusts and so forth. And many of the states in the United States that have asset protection legislation also have specific legislation, statutory legislation on their books that enables you to create those types of split interest trusts that we have, those types of animals here in the United States. And they provide specific asset protection over the interests that are retained for the settlor. Well, we imported that into the Nevis Act. We made it actually more flexible than what the statutory provisions that you see here in the United States, recognizing that people from around the globe may want to use those types of trusts when they look at how flexible they are and what they enable you to do. So the Act also includes provisions related to those specialty trusts, and hopefully people from around the world will take notice of that and see how progressive the Act is as well in that regard. I think it's important to understand as well. There's been if you want to attack a trust in Nevis, or a settlor wants to attack a trust in Nevis, from a practical standpoint, one, in order to get into court in Nevis, you have to file a bond. That's required. And that bond is set to ensure that when you lose the case, or your creditor loses the case, I should say, attacking the trust, that the trustee is able to recoup the trustee's legal fees. And invariably, in almost every situation, you're going to find that your settlor is going to prevail there, or the trust is going to prevail. So that's also an important aspect of the Nevis Act as well. In order to get into court, you're going to have to ensure that that your trustee's legal fees are paid, which the Act obviously provides for as well, if you end up losing that case. So very, very important to focus on. The Act itself is also very flexible in who can serve as trustee. But I typically tell my clients and strongly prefer that we use a trustee that has a bricks and mortar operation on the island. The other thing that we did with the Act is Nevis has a very progressive and very strong, and I think it's the oldest in the world, citizenship by investment program. And we made it easier for people that have established trust or want to establish trust in Nevis, but they also want to get citizenship and live there for some of the year or a large portion of the year and become permanent residents, to establish that trust and remain a beneficiary while they're living in Nevis as well. That was a potentially flawed part of the Act prior to the 2015 amendments. Again, we're in the process and many of us have worked on an amendment and restatement of the Act itself. The 2015 Act had some technical issues that we needed to address and clean up. And so rather than do that by further amendments, most of us elected to put together an amendment and restatement of the Act. And we hope to have that again passed in the next, I'd like to say the next few months, but I think over the next year is a more practical way of viewing that. As you know, nothing ever happens quickly in the world of Caribbean government. So that's important to focus on. Nevis also has exceptional legislation in the IBC area, exceptional legislation in the LLC area, and exceptional legislation in the banking and insurance area, for that matter. So that also makes Nevis a highly attractive jurisdiction to use. In 2015 as well, we passed extensive legislation related to the Llc Act. And a friend of mine participated in that and did most of the work on that revision to the Act. And the important theme there is that it was highly protective of assets that an individual puts into a Nevis LLC. I don't think it replaces a trust. I think that's very important to understand. I think an LLC with the use of a trust is a better way to go. But the charging order has become a very powerful tool in Nevis. That's just a simple court lien that's issued by a court in Nevis that allows a creditor to, or would otherwise allow a creditor to attach an interest in an LLC, and if there's ever a distribution that's made, it has to go to that creditor until the creditor's judgment is satisfied in full plus statutory interest. That can't happen in Nevis for the most part, so that's important to focus on as well. But again, not replacing a trust. I think it's always better to use a trust with an LLC, particularly if the primary goal is asset protection. By the way, looking at Nevis business entities and also trusts from the United States perspective, we look at Nevis and use it from a perspective of asset protection as a primary goal. We also use it for certain estate planning reasons. You can move assets into a Nevis trust and have those assets excludable from your taxable estate here in the United States if you design the trust the right way, including all appreciation and value. So right now we're working with a very high estate and gift tax exemption here, so our clients can move in close to $24 million of assets, actually next year over $24 million of assets tax-free. And then obviously those assets can grow quite substantially over a number of decades. And that original 24 million plus whatever it grows to, whether it's $100 million of value or whatever, would be excluded from their United States estate and gift tax base if you design the trust the right way. So I think that's important too. Globally, most people can look at Nevis as well, most wealthy individuals, and use it for asset protection. I think that's important to focus on as well. But it's not that's not the only reason to go to Nevis. It's a great place to set up a trust and diversify your global holdings, your clients' global holdings. Be able to pass assets on both during life and at death without having to be concerned with testamentary or gifting restrictions that your local law, for instance, Sharia law, might impose on the disposition of those assets. So if you want to favor certain children to the exclusion of others, or you want to make sure that your daughters are protected as well, and assets are left specifically to benefit those individuals, you have the ability to do that by moving assets into Nevis trusts. You also have it's helpful again to use the local business entities or IBCs and LLCs in that regard. That enables you as the family to retain more direct management control over those assets. Also, looking at the IBC Act and the Llc Act, Nevis is a great place to conduct business on an international level. If you set everything up the right way, even though you have the nexus to Nevis and the economic substance to be in Nevis, you're not going to be taxed in Nevis as well. So very good taxation rules in addition to local liability protection and asset protection that you get by using Nevis business entities. Nevis, again, I'll mention this, not necessarily part of this presentation, but Nevis has highly progressive insurance legislation as well. And over the last few years, I've participated in setting up quite a number of captives, or using captives and using Nevis as the base for those insurance companies. So I think that's also interesting to focus on. Again, Nevis being a very progressive jurisdiction, both with its trust law, as you can see, and with its entity law. would be happy to open the floor up for questions. If anyone has any questions they'd like to from the floor or from the online platform. I know many of us have joined from around the globe, like myself. Again, I'm sorry that my camera wasn't working today, but I think you got a good look at me here on the screen. So looks like the camera takes off about 15 pounds for me, which is a good thing.
Thank you, Mr. Goppman, for outlining the unique aspects of our Nevis trust legislation for your wealth accumulation and preservation planning, and also outlining the key aspects of our other legislation, the LLC, NBCO, and the foundation legislation. We have one final speaker before we take the questions, so we'll take all the questions at the end. So I urge you to please take the time to put the questions together. As we have our final speaker, Ms. Heidelin Sutton. A well-regulated jurisdiction inspires confidence to investors. Therefore, Ms. Sutton will underscore the regulatory and supervisory framework currently in place to ensure a secure, safe, and financial future for your investment in Nevis. Join me in welcoming Ms. Sutton to the podium.
With all protocols having been established, let me join with the other speakers today in wishing you a pleasant good afternoon to those of you who are congregated in the Abu Dhabi Hall, as well as those of you who are here with me this morning, a pleasant good morning, and to those who are joining via the live stream, good morning as well. I am very pleased to have been asked to share with you some important information on the regulatory environment which supports the delivery of international financial services within our beloved island of Nevis. Let me start by stating that the international financial services industry was built on 4 guiding principles: accountability, efficiency, integrity, and vigilance. These principles have provided the foundation on which our regulatory environment has been developed and established over the years. As regulator, I have had the immense pleasure of representing the island of Nevis, as well as the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, at numerous conferences and workshops regionally and internationally to defend and give account of how our legislative and regulatory frameworks comply with international standards. I am pleased to report that to date, through our efforts, we have received favorable ratings and reviews in relation to country assessments undertaken by the OECD's Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information, the OECD's Forum on Harmful Tax Practices, as well as the European Union's Code of Conduct Group. While other jurisdictions were forced to abolish their traditional financial services products in order to be removed from these agencies' so-called lists, Nevis remained resilient amid these challenges and retained its product offerings that have long served the Nevis Island administration and provided corporate and economic benefits to their users. We are currently undergoing a review by the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force of our administrative, supervisory, regulatory, legislative mechanisms to mitigate money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing threats. We await the final report with respect to Nevis's efforts in supervising and regulating the financial services industry here. The Financial Services Regulatory Commission, the FSRC in short, is the ultimate regulatory body within the Federation in the areas of financial services, AML-CFT, and anti-proliferation financing. In that capacity, the Commission is responsible for regulating and supervising, as well as monitoring regulated persons with the Financial Services Regulatory Commission Act, the Proceeds of Crime Act, the Anti-Terrorism Act, and the Anti-Proliferation, Financing of Weapons of Mass Destruction Act, and such other legislation, codes, or guidelines that govern AML-CFT. The Nevis branch of the Commission is responsible for the licensing, regulation, and supervision of all non-bank financial services business in Nevis. These include individuals and entities that carry on fiduciary and financial services in the following areas: the formation of limited liability companies, the incorporation of corporations, these are known as LLCs and IBCs, the registration of trusts, the establishment of foundations and international insurance companies, as well as the carrying on of money services businesses and international banking. To ensure that only reputable and legitimate persons are licensed or authorized to conduct these activities, the Nevis branch of the Commission has implemented robust and comprehensive licensing requirements. These are set out in primary and subsidiary legislation and guidelines and vary depending on the type of activities the person intends to carry out. Generally, however, the following stipulations will need to be satisfied. Number one, physical presence. All persons seeking license must establish and operate via an office physically located on the island of Nevis. Fitness and propriety. Number two, the Nevis branch will consider when an applicant is directors, shareholders, beneficial owners, senior management staff, and other officers are fit and proper to carry on financial services business within Nevis. It is important to note that this is an ongoing requirement, and due diligence background checks are undertaken by our external partners to ensure that neither criminals nor their associates are allowed to enter the Nevisian market. The criteria for considering whether they are fit and proper include but are not limited to the following: reputation, integrity, honesty, probity, competence, capability, and financial soundness. Number three, adequacy of resources. For certain sectors such as the international banking, insurance, and trust and corporate service providers, the Nevis branch of the Commission has prescribed minimum capital or financial requirements for applicants. The set thresholds must be maintained throughout the duration of the license. Number four, compliance function. The Nevis branch will decide as to whether the AML-CFT compliance policies and procedures are adequate for the size, scope, and complexity of the applicant, and whether the proposed compliance officer is suitably qualified to oversee the compliance function. 5, experience. The business history, qualifications, and track record of the applicant, and whether the directors and senior management staff have relevant and adequate experience will be considered. Where the applicant is part of a foreign group, the Nevis branch will also consider whether it is subjected to consolidated group supervision by a recognized home regulatory agency. Having been successful in obtaining a license, entities will be subjected to risk-based monitoring and supervision in accordance with the Financial Services Regulatory Commission Act and the respective legislation governing the various licenses. Prudential conduct and AML-CFT on-site and off-site examinations are undertaken by a highly experienced and qualified staff, and appropriate enforcement measures are employed as stipulated under the relevant laws. These examinations include an assessment of the adequacy of policies and procedures for identifying and verifying beneficial ownership information for legal persons and arrangements. Regulated entities are required to ensure that customer due diligence information is obtained, up to date, and readily accessible to competent authorities. As such, the Nevis branch has unfettered access to the files maintained by regulated entities that hold basic and beneficial ownership information on legal persons and arrangements. And these are IBCs, LLCs, trusts, and foundations. The Nevis branch, through the regular issuance of newsletters and training through annual conferences, has identified and communicated typologies, threats, and vulnerabilities of money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing risks. We have therefore insisted that those who are responsible for the creation and formation of these entities be licensed, immobilize bearer shares, be subjected to comprehensive and robust risk-based AML/CFT supervision and regulation, employ risk-based customer due diligence procedures when onboarding new and monitoring existing customers, implement stringent record-keeping requirements, and appoint FSRC-approved compliance officers, etc. In that regard, for the first time in Nevis's history, action was taken to strengthen the regulatory framework and supervisory practices for the oversight of the trust and corporate service provider sector. Earlier this year, the Nevis Trust and Corporate Service Providers Ordinance was passed in the Nevis Island Assembly, and regulations to operationalize the ordinance were promulgated in order to comply with the Group of International Financial Center Supervisor Standard on the regulation of trust and corporate service providers. This has been a major step for this jurisdiction and demonstrate Nevis' commitment to adhere to the highest of international standards. The international banking sector has grown over the past few years, but is equally subjected to risk-based supervision by the branch. The licensing process is vigorous, and rightly so, because we need to ensure that only highly qualified, competent, and fit and proper persons are entrusted with accessing and investing customers' funds. Consequently, contraventions to legislation which is designed to protect customers are strictly enforced. I trust that this brief overview of the regulatory framework in Nevis has been beneficial. I firmly believe that with the implementation of these regulatory measures, we can continue to promote Nevis as a responsible and reputable jurisdiction in which to conduct business. Let me end, therefore, by wishing you a productive and blessed day. May it please you.
Thank you, Ms. Sutton. I'm sure you'll agree with me that the Nevis jurisdiction is well regulated and we have all the aspects in place to protect your investment. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our formal presentation. I will now open the floor for questions, both from our audience in Dubai and those of you who have joined online. Today we have outlined to you various aspects, from the tranquility of investing in Nevis to aspect of our trust legislation, our regulatory framework, and our framework for licensing international banks and the other entities. And I'm sure by now you have formulated a number of questions which you'll want to pose to us or to seek clarity on any area that you are not sure of. But at the same time, I'm hoping that our presentation was very clear and that you can now move forward to create your various investment products and investment portfolios and use the Nevis products as investment opportunities for your financial future. We now open the floor for questions.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon for listening to our distinguished speakers today. I know that many of you have questions, and I welcome those that are in the Abu Dhabi Hall to ask them. So if you do have a question, please raise your hand. To begin with, we will start with the first question. The first question posed to our distinguished speakers is, why do you consider Nevis as a premier jurisdiction of choice when compared to other Caribbean jurisdictions?
That's an easy one from, this is Jonathan stepping in. One, it's well regulated, as Heidi mentioned. It has a tremendous statutory infrastructure It's certainly its trust legislation is far ahead of any other of its possible competitors in the Caribbean, including the Cayman Islands and the Bahamas and even Bermuda, for that matter. It has very flexible trust legislation right now and very progressive trust legislation. So I think that's that also sets it apart. And also just a wide variety now of financial advisory firms, trust companies, and other institutions, a wide variety of lawyers that can assist you in on the island as well, and other financial professionals. So I think all of that makes Nevis, even though it's a small island and a small jurisdiction, a very attractive place to come and set up shop for your financial structures.
Another question that we have here from Abu Dhabi Hall is, what are the asset protection features of a Nevis trust?
I think I'm jumping under that one again, so sorry, I don't mean to monopolize the conversation. But the asset protection features are if you place assets in the trust itself and you design it appropriately within the requirements of the Act itself, and someone goes after those assets, they're a potential creditor. They're not going to be successful in getting at them. So your clients can remain discretionary beneficiaries, be able to benefit from the income and the principal of those assets, the growth of those assets, and yet have them beyond the reach of their creditors to exist anywhere in the world itself. There are all sorts of features, and then on a practical level, all sorts of the experience of the jurisdiction and how long it's been in this business that make it highly attractive from an asset protection standpoint. So creditors are not able to seize the assets in a properly structured and funded trust if they go after the trust. And this is something that's very important to understand as well, because if someone's attacking that trust, depending upon where you establish it in the world, defending it can be a rather expensive proposition. Nevis has taken steps to greatly reduce the cost of that defense if you prevail, and you're most likely to prevail under Nevis law. So from a practical perspective, it's an exceptional place to do a trust just based on keeping expenses down when someone attacks the trust itself. The various interests that a beneficiary might retain in that trust, whether it's an annuity interest coming out of that trust or it's a mandatory income interest, all of those types of interests are strongly protected under local law. We have specific legislation that becomes highly protective for discretionary interests in the trust, which you won't find anywhere in the world. And then the ultimate aspect there is that you yourself, you can take your financial fortune, you can take your assets, and you can transfer those assets into the trust, and you, as the person who creates that trust, can remain a discretionary beneficiary, and yet those assets cannot be reached by your creditor. So it is a very flexible and prudent way to hold your wealth, your global wealth, and in order to protect it from the potential claims of creditors, including divorcing spouses, as well as bankruptcy trustees and regulators from different areas of the world if they're trying to make claims on the trust. Again, all when you're setting up these types of trusts under appropriate circumstances and at an appropriate time.
Great, thank you. And the final question here from Abu Dhabi Hall is, what is the difference between an ordinary foundation as opposed to a multiform foundation, and what are the benefits of both?
Should I let Heidi answer that as the local attorney? Or if I can take I can take on the multiform foundation. The multiform foundation, I'm sorry, the multiform foundation is more akin to a trust structure, but it's used throughout. It's very well known throughout the civil law world, and so it's a concept that we imported into Nevis a number of years ago. It enables you to create a more of a corporate type of structure that again people from civil law jurisdictions have been more comfortable with. The problem with using foundations when you have beneficiaries, and most of us have beneficiaries and family that are in the United States, is they're not well known to attorneys here, and they're not well known to our taxing authorities. So we're always kind of guessing as to what those types of, as to how to tax those foundations, and that very much depends on the terms of the rules and regulations that you use with a foundation. And we have trouble determining here in the United States, for instance, whether those foundations should be taxed as trusts or whether they should be taxed as corporations. And depending upon which you choose, it could be a disaster for your local beneficiaries, or depending on which the taxing authorities choose. So we prefer to stick with trust because there's a lot more tax certainty. I believe the difference, though, between an ordinary foundation is that's more charitably focused. So the multiform foundation is for private assets to hold and to benefit private beneficiaries and provide asset protection. But the ordinary foundation is more akin to using it for charitable purposes. At least that's my understanding. I could be wrong, and I'd ask any other the speakers to step up and say that as an attorney who practices in the common law and has been doing trust planning for the last 32 years. We're not admittedly not as familiar with foundations, and again, because of the tax issues that we have to deal with here when we have clients or families that have foundations and are benefiting from them, we're oftentimes pulling out our hair trying to figure out how they're taxed here.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Cullen, I hand over to you for further discussion.
Thank you. I gather we have...
Heidi wants to speak.
If I could also weigh in on that question, in terms of multiform foundations, what is unique is that it has the ability to be converted, transformed, or continued or consolidated into other entities. So therefore, if an entity outside of the jurisdiction of Nevis wants to have a multiform foundation set up, they can be converted to a multiform within Nevis, and the ordinance allows that flexibility in terms of different entities being converted to be transformed into the foundation. The other aspect of the multiform foundation ordinance, which is the statute that allows these entities to be established, is that an existing division entity, such as an IBC or LLC, could also be transformed or converted into a multiform foundation. So in that respect, it is a very unique structure and product.
While we're on foundation, Ms. Sutton, there was a question, the difference between an ordinary foundation and a multiform foundation. So could you take that one, please?
Okay, well, that was the reason why I weighed in on that, because Mr. Goppman already provided a response in relation to the differences between the ordinary and multiform foundation. And I also addressed the other aspect, which is the flexibility given to it by the statute.
Okay, thank you. I gather we have Mr. Michael Press online. Mr. Press?
Yes, good afternoon, panel. Good afternoon, everybody. I was listening with some interest to what Ms. Heidi Lynn Sutton said, and also Mr. Gottman said about multiform foundations. I would urge our international clients to consider using multiform foundations. They are, as Ms. Heidi Lynn Sutton said, they are a unique product. And it's a testament to Nevis that we have a product like that. And I would urge all international participants to this webinar to, if you're issues are with respect to estate planning, with respect to succession, with respect to having flexibility, protection of assets, then I would urge them to take a very good look at multi-form foundations. They are a unique entity. They allow for flexibility, protection of assets. Given the way many of our international participants live, given the way we all have beneficiaries and we all wish to pass on our assets to our beneficiaries, then I would urge everyone in the strongest sense to look at that product, and you will find that product to be the type of product that you need in this modern world. Again, I'm not au fait with the context of what Mr. Goppman said as regards US tax laws, but I am au fait to the extent of how a foundation, and this product in particular, can assist and can enhance your asset protection portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question that was posed, Ms. Sutton, was the procedure for redomiciliation of LLCs. What's the procedure for redomiciliation?
The procedure for redomiciliation of LLCs is very simple. First of all, persons would need to approach a trust and corporate service provider who is duly licensed within Nevis for them to provide to you the requisite information that allows for that procedure to be undertaken. You will need to provide information in relation to basic and beneficial ownership information, as I mentioned in my presentation. That is critical because all persons who wish to conduct business within Nevis would have to first establish their identity, and for the trust and corporate service providers to verify that in relation to our AML/CFT laws. So you would need to first conduct business with the trust and corporate service provider who will provide information in relation to the different documents to be provided. You will need to ensure that the corporate governance documents, the corporate documents from the jurisdiction in which the entity was established, the company was established outside of Nevis, that they're verified by the corporate registry in which they were established. Provide those to the trust and corporate service provider within Nevis, who would then ensure that they are registered with the company's registry. So I would urge you to contact one of our duly licensed trust and corporate service providers. The information is provided on our website, which is www.nevisfsrc.com. You'll be able to choose from one of those highly qualified individuals, and they would be able to guide you further.
Thank you. One additional question has to do with the issue of reporting suspicious transactions. What is the primary entity that deals with suspicious transactions? What is the procedure to report such suspicious transactions? Ms. Sutton?
First of all, the entity that you would report suspicious transactions to is the Financial Intelligence Unit. That is the FIU. That is the body responsible for receiving such reports and analyze them to ensure that the transactions or information provided within that report are properly investigated.
That's a national body.
And as the Premier mentioned, it's a national body. It's the Financial Intelligence Unit that is responsible for both SINKITS and Nevis.
Thank you. I gather there is one additional person online. Diana, could you proceed, please?
Hi, I'm calling from Nigeria, or I'm joining in from Nigeria. It's been a very interesting morning with just hearing everything about Nevis, just trying to take it all in. But I have a question, which is that, we've heard so much about the jurisdiction of Nevis, primarily through the Bank of Nevis International. And I'm wondering, is the island welcoming of Nigerian investments? And do you plan on coming to Nigeria to promote the jurisdiction to our investment community over here?
Yeah, this is Mark Brantley, Premier of Nevis. What I will say is that we welcome legitimate investors from all across the globe. We have, as you would have heard, a very robust vetting process. We have a very robust anti-money laundering, anti-terrorist financing process. We are entirely at one with the international standards that have been set. And we are constantly being reviewed by regional and international agencies for our compliance rating. It is a matter of pride for us that we have maintained an excellent rating throughout. And this is what we pride ourselves on as being a well-regulated jurisdiction. And so we welcome investors, whether they be from Nigeria, from other parts of Africa, from the European continent, from the United States and Canada, from Latin America. Wherever investors coming from, we welcome them. Our byword, watchword, however, is, of course, legitimacy. And so investors must be legitimate investors who are coming to help us to build this jurisdiction. And we certainly try to weed out any bad actors and not allow them to be a part of our financial services sector here on the island of Nevis. So there is nothing that is peculiar to any particular jurisdiction or any particular country. We welcome investment from across the globe, and Nevis has had a very highly regulated and well-respected jurisdiction dating back to 1984. So we have been doing this now for over 3 decades, and I believe that the fact that we're still here is testament to the resilience, but also the capacity to adapt and to, of course, deal with new challenges, and we have done so hand in glove with the international community to ensure that our jurisdiction maintains the very highest standards of probity and, by extension, that instills confidence in our investors. So if you're part of this conference or if you are intending to invest, wherever you may be from, Nevis welcomes you.
Thank you. So the second part of the question was whether or not there would be any plans to come to Nigeria to promote this jurisdiction to the investment community, like in here.
I'm not sure I'm hearing properly. Is there, you mentioned something about Nigeria to promote? Forgive me, I didn't hear.
Yes, so will there be any plans to come to Nigeria to promote the Nevis jurisdiction, to the investment community that's here?
Well, I confess that given the COVID realities that we've had to deal with over the past 2 years, we have not been engaged in much travel for purposes of promotion. And indeed, events such as these, which are partially virtual or hybrid events, have been our go-to in this particular period to try and get, obviously, our message out there that Nevis is an excellent choice to invest and is open for business. However, we will consider whether or not a trip to Nigeria and, in fact, to other jurisdictions could be on the cards in the near future as we look post-COVID and travel restrictions are eased and we're able to travel more freely. So let us look forward to that. Thank you for the suggestion, and we shall certainly see what we can do in the near future.
All right. Thank you, Prime Minister. Thanks for your response.
Thank you. There's another question that is related to registered agent. Ms. Sutton, why is a registered agent necessary, and whether or not an individual can transact with the department without going through a registered agent?
First of all, I'll take the last question, whether or not an individual can transact directly with our office. The answer is no. You'd have to go through a trusted corporate service provider. As I mentioned before, these are duly licensed individuals who are required by law to interact with us, to perform transactions on behalf of the customer, who is usually the beneficial owner of the entities that they want to set up, whether an IBC, LLC, trust, or foundation. The legislation governing all the products and services require that individuals first contact these individuals, duly licensed persons, so that all registration, incorporation, formation can be done through them.
Let me add to what Heidi has said, that of course the underpinning of our jurisdiction is regulation. We have to ensure that we have a well-regulated jurisdiction which gives confidence to the international community. And so part of the reason why we go through licensed service providers is because they are regulated entities. And they certainly are held to certain standards and have to maintain those standards. I think, as Heidi made it clear throughout her presentation, these are ongoing requirements. It's not a one-off requirement, but throughout the life of these entities and providers doing business here, they're constantly being assessed to ensure that they adhere to international best practices and international standards. As a result, individuals have to go through a service provider because the service providers are held to a very, very high standard. So in that sense, it is designed to protect the individual investor, but it's also designed to protect the jurisdiction and to ensure that at all times we have the type of jurisdiction that certainly we can be proud of.
Thank you. There's another question on the fee structure. Incorporation fees for the various product, licensing fees, annual renewal fees for the various products.
The various fees for forming, establishing, incorporating our entities, whether they be IVCs, LLCs, trusts, or foundations, can be found on our website under the various tabs associated with the services. So visit our website at www.nevisfsrc.com. The fees are usually within the range of $250 US for incorporation, registration, formation or establishment. You would also contact your trust and corporate service provider, who would be able to provide you with more information in terms of the structure.
Thank you. I gather there's a Bernard Nye online. Bernard?
You're muted, Bernard.
Hello, my name is Bernard. I'm reaching out from Africa, Ghana. My question goes out to Mr. Ada. I want to find out whether IMBL will focus on large institutional banks, corporations, or whether the focus will also be on SMEs to support in terms of LCs and other trade instruments. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. I appreciate the question. I've actually had the opportunity to visit Ghana. It's a very, very nice country, and I hope to go back. You know, as I described in my speech, financial service is not one size fits all. So we definitely look forward to also working with large corporations that want to take advantage when their typical banks don't have the efficiency or speed that they're looking for to complete the transaction. So we welcome working not only with large corporations from time to time, but also with international banks or banks even in Ghana itself when they need help in processing transactions, settlements, or even providing services to their clients that they could not fulfill traditionally because of collateral or capital requirements in a home country such as Ghana. So we look forward to providing banking for all different sizes of institutions, but most importantly, we want to be nimble, creative, and available for the small and medium-sized companies as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Certainly, whether or not there are provision in our legislation for domiciliation of family offices, what's the procedure and the implication? for having family offices established in Nevis.
Currently, our legislative framework does not allow for that type of product. That is something that we will be looking into for the coming year, and we hope that we might provide a framework where that can be undertaken.
You have been a very attentive audience so far. Additional questions? Any more questions from the Abu Dhabi Hall in Dubai, or moderator?
We have completed the questions here. Thank you.
Our online participants, are there any further questions? Okay, if there are no further questions, we wish to thank everyone, especially those who are present in the Abu Dhabi Hall. We enjoyed interaction with you, our potential investors, today. And I'm sure our array of presenters would have provided valuable insights into the products, procedures of the various product offerings we have here in Nevis. It is our hope that you will find our products interesting and that you will seek to include them as part of your estate planning, wealth planning, as we move forward into the new year. Again, thank everyone for being an attentive audience, and continue to enjoy the rest of Dubai 2020 Expo. Thank you.
Okay.